What if I told you the most powerful thing a man could ever say is nothing? What if you've been taught to talk, plead, fix, fight, when in reality the strongest men walk away in silence? No begging, no closure, no warning, just gone, not out of fear, out of power. She texts, no reply. She cries, no reaction. She disappears. You vanish deeper. Because when a man stops chasing what disrespects him, he becomes unstoppable. Comment below, I choose respect over validation. You're not broken. You're waking up. Waking up to a world that lied to you, that told you love means sacrifice, forgiveness, chasing, proving. But what they didn't teach you was how to stop. How to stop bleeding for people who treat you like an option. How to stop explaining your value to someone who already decided you're disposable. This is for you, the man who gave everything and got silence in return. This is for the man who stayed while she ghosted, who forgave while she disrespected. You thought loyalty was strength, but true strength is silence. Because masculine men don't chase, they disappear. Number 1, he doesn't beg, he vanishes. He doesn't beg, he vanishes. Not because he's passive, but because his power is internal, not performative. A man of true value doesn't chase noise. He listens to silence and recognizes that her hesitation is already a form of rejection, that every time she ignores him, changes her tone, or makes him feel uncertain, she's subconsciously testing how much of himself he's willing to lose just to stay in her presence. And he knows that when a man lowers his standards to maintain a connection, he is not in love, he's in denial, and denial is the root of all male suffering. Not because love is wrong, but because giving it to the wrong person destroys the very essence of who you are. And he remembers the moment it first started, the cold tone in her voice when he said something vulnerable and she laughed, or worse, went silent. The time he sent that long text pouring his heart out only to get a thumbs-up emoji in response. The time she posted a thirst trap 3 hours after ignoring him. He remembers, and not in bitterness, but in clarity, because masculine clarity begins with remembering what you tolerated while calling it love, and every time you excused her distance, explained her behavior to your boys, or told yourself she's just stressed, you were teaching her how little you valued your presence and how eager you were to beg for scraps of her time, attention, or validation. But now you stop, because the man who vanishes doesn't do it to punish. He does it to prevent further self-destruction, because masculinity isn't about being emotionless. It's about being in control of your emotions, and control starts when you withdraw from situations that beg you to lose yourself. So the next time she goes quiet for days and pops up with, "Hey, stranger," don't respond, because your silence now speaks the respect you should have spoken to yourself months ago. And when she tries to guilt-trip you for not being available, don't explain yourself, because men who have to justify their absence to women who disappeared first are not respected. They're seen as soft, weak, and easily manipulated. And you're not that man anymore. You're the man who deletes the number not out of anger, but out of understanding that your growth deserves privacy, your healing deserves silence, and your future deserves peace. And if she couldn't see your worth when you were emotionally available, she doesn't deserve to watch you rise now that you've learned emotional discipline. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will feel lonely. But what hurts more is staying in a place where your masculinity is questioned, your love is minimized, and your presence is seen as optional. Because when a man stops chasing, he starts evolving. And when he evolves, the world starts noticing. Not because he shouts his pain, but because his silence builds a presence too loud to ignore. And if you've ever found yourself rereading the same old messages, hoping she meant something different, or stalking her profile trying to find proof that she misses you, understand this: you're not in love. You're in obsession with an idea of her that she never lived up to, and it's time to kill that fantasy, because every day you wait for her to text back is a day she's watching someone else take what you begged her to value. And the truth is brutal. She didn't forget your value. She calculated your willingness to stay no matter how little she gave. And once she saw you'd keep chasing, she stopped trying, so now you stop too, but you stop with strategy, with silence, with no announcement. Because when you vanish without closure, you force her to live with the last version of you she saw. And if that version was cold, calm, detached, she'll replay it in her mind endlessly, wondering if she pushed too far, wondering why the man who once would have moved mountains now won't return a single call. And that's the lesson. Women remember the men who leave a question mark, not an exclamation point, so give her the question mark, and live in the confidence that you are no longer reachable, because the more available you were, the less she valued your attention. But the moment you vanish, your silence becomes a mirror. Every post she makes, every text she sends unanswered, becomes a reflection of the respect she never gave. And while she's drowning in "what if," you're rising in "what's next," because you've replaced sorrow with structure, neediness with neutrality, and heartbreak with habits. And now you're the man who doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy. You're the man who chooses himself even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And every time you want to go back, reread this truth. She wasn't the one if she made you feel like an option. She wasn't the one if she tested your patience instead of building your peace. And she wasn't the one if her loyalty came with conditions and her affection was rationed like privilege. And if she ever loved you, she would have never let you feel disposable. So stop holding on to someone who dropped you without explanation, and start honoring the version of you that refuses to accept crumbs in a world where you were born to feast. And if you ever wonder why it feels so hard to let go, remember, you weren't addicted to her. You were addicted to who you were willing to become just to keep her. And now that you've let him die, you're finally becoming who you were always meant to be. And in that journey, vanish, without apology, without explanation, because the man who doesn't beg is the man who's already free. He's not available for games. This will be written in one seamless, flowing, and emotionally powerful paragraph. It will be filled with non-redundant red pill insights, direct psychological truths, real-life relatable situations, and life-changing practical advice men can act on, all delivered in an emotionally engaging tone that keeps listeners locked in to the final word. Number 2. He's not available for games. He's not available for games, not because he's antisocial or arrogant, but because he understands the true cost of tolerating manipulation dressed as affection. And you need to ask yourself this: how many times have you answered a message just because you didn't want to look petty? How many times have you gone on a date with someone who clearly wasn't respecting your time just because you didn't want to be alone that weekend? How many times did you show up for someone who only calls you when it's convenient, when they're bored, when they've burned every other option, and you're the last flicker of attention left in their contact list? And this is where the masculine man separates himself, not by shouting louder or demanding more, but by withdrawing access entirely. And if you've ever had someone breadcrumb you, where they give you just enough attention to keep you emotionally tethered, but never enough to feel secure, then you know exactly what these games look like. They post a half-naked story an hour after ignoring your text. They flirt when they're bored and vanish when you respond. They ask personal questions but never offer answers. They play confused when you set boundaries and call you crazy when you point out patterns and you think saying something will fix it. But every time you bring it up, they say you're overthinking, too intense or not chill enough. And that gaslighting is the first red flag. The moment you hear "you're overreacting," what they're actually saying is, "I'm testing your tolerance for disrespect." And a man who respects himself does not negotiate with confusion. He vanishes from it, because confusion is not chemistry, inconsistency is not challenge, and love is not supposed to feel like a maze. It's supposed to feel like alignment, like clarity. And while she's busy watching who watches her stories, you're too focused building the life she'll regret not being part of. And make no mistake, games only work on men who haven't mastered their inner world, men who need external validation to feel masculine, men who think attention is affection. But when you've done the work, when you've sat in silence, faced your demons, created your routines, raised your standards, you become allergic to disrespect. And here's what it looks like practically. She ghosts you for a week, then hits you with a miss you text. You don't reply, not because you're trying to hurt her, but because you've finally understood that people who love you don't disappear for fun. And if they do, it's a sign, not a puzzle. So when she sends that snap after midnight, you don't swipe. You don't even open it. Not because you're cold, but because you're done rewarding disrespect with attention. You're done chasing ghosts who only appear when it's convenient for them. You're done explaining your worth to people who treat it like an inconvenience, and you remember the moment it all changed. It wasn't dramatic. Maybe you were just staring at your screen, seeing her active and not replying. Maybe you realized how small you felt trying to prove you're enough. Maybe you looked in the mirror and saw someone who deserves more than half effort and occasional compliments. And that moment, that was your awakening, because the games only work when you think your masculinity is up for auction. But the moment you take it off the market, everything shifts. Her curiosity spikes, her power drops, and your value multiplies, not because she said so, but because you finally did. And if you think this is about being emotionally distant, you've missed the point entirely. This is about emotional clarity, knowing that every minute spent explaining your worth to someone who's ignoring your effort is a minute stolen from your purpose. And your purpose is bigger than proving your place in someone's life who keeps testing if you'll still be there after they've walked away 10 times. So what do you do when the next game starts? When she posts a quote about focusing on herself right after seeing you move on? Or when she starts liking all your pictures after weeks of silence? You do nothing. You keep building. You keep growing. Because the man who isn't available for games is too focused on becoming a man who doesn't have to play them. He attracts peace. He doesn't chase chaos. He responds with purpose, not emotion. And every time you hold back that text, every time you ignore that trap disguised as a compliment, every time you stay silent when she expects a reaction, you're not losing her. You're finding you, and this is where most men fall off. They confuse no contact with manipulation, when in reality, no contact is self-respect. Because true masculinity is not reactive, it's responsive, and the difference is everything. Reactive men fight every insult, respond to every tease, chase every flake. Responsive men assess, observe, and decide if it's even worth their energy to engage. And 99% of games fall apart when the man simply refuses to play, when he sees the loop and steps out of it instead of chasing his tail for a little bit of affection. And what you'll notice is, the moment you disengage, she either elevates or evaporates. Either way, you win, because clarity is always better than chaos. And if you're wondering whether she's playing games, she probably is. Because women don't confuse men they truly want. They don't delay texts to seem cool. They don't post thirst traps to get your attention. They make it easy, clear, and consistent. And anything else is strategy, not sincerity. And you don't want to build your legacy with someone who's strategizing how to make you feel insecure. Because that insecurity you feel when she ignores you, that's not love. It's manipulation. And the antidote is boundaries, not begging, because when you tell yourself, I'll wait for her to realize my worth, what you're really saying is, I'm okay being disrespected until she feels like valuing me, and no man with a mission ever thinks like that, because he knows that time spent playing games is time stolen from building the life she'll regret missing out on. And every day you ignore the game is a day closer to the woman who doesn't need to play one to be chosen, because that woman exists. She's calm, she's clear, she's confident, and she's not impressed by men who get emotionally manipulated every time a girl posts a bikini pic and ghosts them afterward. She's attracted to the man who's so rooted in his values that he doesn't flinch when someone tries to test them. And if you want to be that man, start now. Cut off every flake, every ghoster, every fake flirt who disappears when you ask for real energy. And if it hurts, good, let it hurt. Let it burn through the fantasy you had about her, because that fantasy was the problem, not her absence. And the sooner you accept the truth, the sooner you'll stop entertaining people who only reach out when they're bored, lonely, or craving control. And from this point forward, let your absence speak louder than your pain, your peace be louder than your passion, and your standards louder than your need for attention, because the game only works when you show up for it, and when you walk away, when you go quiet, when you stop performing for people who don't clap for your effort, you stop being an option and start being the one they never deserved to begin with. Number 3, he builds while she wonders. What if your silence was the most terrifying thing she ever experienced? Not your anger, not your tears, not your explanations, but the cold, deafening void of you disappearing into progress. And what if the best revenge was no revenge, just rebirth? The kind of transformation so silent, so steady, so focused, that while she's out partying with distractions, taking filtered selfies, and chasing fleeting attention, you're stacking bricks in the dark, building a version of yourself. Even she wouldn't recognize if she ever tried to come back. And maybe you haven't felt it yet. Maybe you're still waking up checking your phone to see if she texted, still replaying that last conversation in your head like it's a movie with no closure. But let me ask you something real. How long are you going to mourn someone who made you feel like a burden just for loving them? How long are you going to sit in that room, surrounded by memories that no longer belong to your future, giving your energy to a woman who no longer deserves a seat at your table? And if the answer is longer than today, then this is the moment it ends. Because while she wonders why you haven't texted, you're building a business, a body, a bank account, a mindset that no longer flinches when someone pulls away. And the truth is, she never expected you to vanish. She expected you to linger like all the others, to double text, to keep watching her stories, to post something subtle, hoping she sees it. But instead, you went dark, not out of spite, but out of strategy, because you finally realized that love without respect is self-destruction in disguise. And now you're not trying to win her back. You're trying to win back the parts of yourself you gave away for free, the pieces of your confidence chipped away by every unanswered message, every delayed response, every "I'm just figuring things out right now" excuse she fed you while entertaining other options behind your back. And it's not about hate, it's about hunger. The hunger to rebuild what was neglected, to rediscover what you buried just to make her comfortable. Because the truth is brutal. You dimmed your light so she could shine, and now you're standing in darkness wondering why no one can see you. But not anymore, because now you become the storm, not the echo. The man who doesn't just survive heartbreak but turns it into fuel, into fire, into focus. And while she posts inspirational quotes about healing and doing me, you're actually doing the work, waking up at 5 a.m., not because it's trendy, but because you've got a dream that doesn't sleep. Hitting the gym when your body screams no, because your future demands yes. Cutting off friends who only show up when it's convenient, because you've finally learned that energy is currency, and you're done investing in what doesn't grow. And every day she doesn't hear from you is a day you've earned in progress, because you stopped needing closure and started creating legacy. And here's the part she'll never understand. You weren't trying to impress her. You were trying to include her in a future she didn't believe in. And when she left, she didn't just leave a man, she left an empire under construction. And one day, when she stumbles across your profile and sees the glow-up she thought would break you, sees the business, the clarity, the new woman who looks at you like you're the prize she never saw, she'll feel it. Not the regret of losing you, but the shame of underestimating your silence, and you won't even notice, because you'll be too focused on what's next, too in love with your purpose to be haunted by your past. And this is how masculine men build, quietly, daily, relentlessly, without applause, because their success doesn't come from proving someone wrong, it comes from proving their old self right. And while she's lying in bed scrolling through men who want one thing, you're becoming the man who offers everything but only to those who've earned it. And when people ask what happened between you two, she won't say you begged, she'll say you vanished. And that's the power shift. The man who begged is forgotten. The man who vanished is never replaced, because when you disappear to build, you don't come back with apologies. You come back with proof. Not proof that you're better than her, but proof that you were always more than she could see. And now your standards don't allow re-entry. And this isn't just about her. It's about every time you neglected yourself to be more likable, every time you compromised your mission to be available, every time you paused your potential for someone who paused you in return. And from this point forward, the world will know you by your discipline, not your damage, by your focus, not your failures, by your vision, not your void. And yes, there will be nights you miss her, mornings you want to break the silence, moments where your old self whispers, just check her profile. But that's when you remember why you started, not to get her back, but to get you back. And in that remembering, you win, because masculine men don't chase. They replace not women, but identities, old habits, soft mindsets that kept them accessible to people who never deserved access in the first place. And as you rise, you'll attract others who see the work, not just the result, who recognize the value, not just the vibe. And you'll realize the greatest blessing wasn't her loving you, it was her leaving you, because in her absence, you found your standard, and that standard will now guard your peace like a soldier in battle, allowing no woman, no opportunity, no old version of you to ever cross your boundaries again, because you are no longer building for love, you are building from love, the kind that begins with self and ends with legacy. Number 4, he becomes untouchable. Have you ever seen her look at you like you were invisible, like all the time, loyalty, sacrifice, and effort you poured into her heart evaporated the moment someone with a better smile or a flashier life showed up on her screen, and you sat there, trying to convince yourself not to call, not to text, not to beg her to remember who you were to her when no one else showed up, when she cried at 2 a.m., when she couldn't pay rent or trust anyone with her secrets, and she forgot or pretended to, and all the while, something inside you shattered. But that shattering was sacred because the man you used to be, the available man, the nice guy, the just checking in to see how you're doing man, he died in that silence, and what rose in his place wasn't bitter, wasn't vengeful, wasn't fragile. It was something colder, sharper, more precise, something untouchable, because the truth is, no man becomes untouchable by being liked, by being chosen, or by being validated. He becomes untouchable the moment he stops depending on her recognition to validate his existence, and you realize it slowly, maybe after she left you on red for the 5th time, or maybe when you saw her in someone else's story laughing like you never existed and you wanted to scream, to remind her that you mattered, but then something inside whispered, no. No more reminders, no more explanations, no more proving yourself to someone who turned you into a background character in her highlight reel. And from that moment on, you stopped reacting, you stopped chasing, you stopped hoping, And in that stillness, in that terrifying silence, you found it. Self-respect that couldn't be manipulated, peace that couldn't be interrupted, purpose that didn't shrink when she left. And the transformation wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself with a gym selfie or a savage tweet. It happened quietly. In the mornings you chose discipline over despair. In the nights you studied instead of stalking her profile. In the weeks you said nothing while she watched your story, wondering why you stopped asking how she was. And little by little, her power over you dissolved. Not because she changed, but because you did. Because the man she once expected to orbit around her mood swings, her disappearing acts, her passive-aggressive games, he disappeared. And what replaced him was a man so stable, so emotionally sovereign, so grounded in his own presence that even if she came back tomorrow, she'd only be greeted with polite indifference. And that's the real goal. Not to win her back, not to make her regret, but to become so evolved that her absence no longer echoes in your soul. And when she reaches out, because they always do, you won't even feel the rush you used to, because by then you've outgrown her emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. You've upgraded your life, your habits, your standards, and she'll sense it, not in your words, but in your lack of them. Because untouchable men don't argue about their worth. They let time and growth speak for them. And while she's wondering if you still care, you're booking flights, closing deals, building legacies, dating women who don't make you beg for the bare minimum. Women who recognize the value of consistency, of presence, of masculine discipline. And your life will speak so loudly, she won't even dare ask for a second chance, because she'll know that version of you, the one who cried, begged, overgave. He's gone, buried under months of work, pain, reflection, and unshakable boundaries. And every time you feel the urge to reach out, remember this: you are no longer him. You are no longer a man who needs a reply to feel complete. You are no longer affected by silence because you've mastered it, weaponized it, turned it into the very thing that rebuilt your identity. And now you walk into rooms with your head high, not because you're arrogant, but because you've made peace with being alone, and that peace radiates. It's in the way you speak, the way you dress, the way you don't flinch when her name comes up, the way you can be kind without being available, the way you can care without caving. And that's what untouchable men are made of: clarity, control, and conviction. Not the kind that needs to be proven, but the kind that exists whether she claps or not. And if you ever doubt whether it's worth it, ask yourself this: do you want to be remembered as the man who stayed soft for someone who hardened every time you needed softness, or the man who rose in silence, built a new life, and let the pain be the bridge to his purpose? And the answer, brother, is always the latter, because the man who becomes untouchable is not the one who got lucky. He's the one who got tired. Tired of explaining, tired of proving, tired of shrinking, and finally chose to disappear, not in bitterness, but in brilliance. And if she ever tries to come back, remember, she's not reaching for you. She's reaching for the version of you who tolerated what the new you would never allow. And that man doesn't exist anymore. You were never meant to chase what walks away from you. You were meant to walk so far in your purpose that those who once overlooked you can no longer reach you. The version of you that begged has nothing in common with the man you're becoming. And the silence you've chosen, that's not avoidance, that's evolution. This isn't just about her. It's about every moment you betrayed yourself just to feel loved. Never again. Comment below: I don't chase, I transform. Support this mission. Every share, like, and comment helps another man hear what no one ever told him. You are not weak for walking away. You are powerful for refusing to explain your worth.